So this would be the sixth episode for Cracking the Coding interview playlist series on this channel. So the problem that we're going to solve today is problem number 1.6, and the title of the problem is string compression. So we need to implement a method to perform basic string compression using the counts of repeated characters. For example, the string double A, then B, then 5 times C, and then triple A would become A, the letter itself, then the number of times it has repeated, then B as the letter itself and the number of times it has been repeated. Then the same is the case with C and the same is the case with A. And I could also notice that for this specific example, we need to treat each index and each pattern differently. For example, if there is a break in a pattern between a specific letter, for example, A is repeated twice here, and then the pattern breaks, and then it starts with B, and then it starts with C, and then ends with A again. So we would not add the number of times A has been repeated in the whole string. We would only do that for the specific pattern until where it is not broken, as in this case. So we need to keep this in mind for this problem too. And then there's again also a check that if the compressed string would not become smaller than the original string, so we need to return the original string in that case. And we may assume that the string is only uppercase and lowercase letters. So it's generally a easy problem as I could think of for a solution for it. So I would then now create my file for this solution. We need to include the string class as well. Yeah, so our function would have a return type of string, and I'll name my function as compress string. And now inside this function, I would pass a string, and we could name it as any string, s in this case. So now moving on, what I think of this problem, like what we should do for this problem is that we would create a empty string as a result, and we would then create a variable count which would be initialized to 1. And then what we could do is that we would then run a for loop till the end of the string, and then we what we could do is that we could then we could compare uh, the ith index of the string with the I plus 1 index, and if they are equal, so for example, if this statement holds true, so then we would simply increment our count, which would be the number of times our character has been repeated, and this would be the case if this statement holds true. And if it is false, so then what we need to do, so if false, so then what we could do is that we could simply just append our string ith index to the resultant string, which would be the letter in that case, for example, and then we could append the variable count that we have created. And then what we could do is that we could then initialize count is equals to 1 again, because for a single character to be repeated once, we need to make count 1, so we should not start with count 0. So this would be the pseudo code for this problem as I could think for it. So let's write the solution for this. So I could create a resultant string for the result. Yeah, so as we have created this res resultant string for our uh, string to be stored, the compressed string to be stored. Now we would create a variable count and initialize it to 1. And now run a for loop from I is equals to 0 till the length of the string, and then I plus plus. So now inside this for loop, what we need to do is that I need to pass an if statement that if I is less than the length of the string uh, minus 1, and yeah, so we also need to check that if uh, the ith index of the string is equals to the next index of it, so that we remain inside the loop as well, and we check each index respectively. So if this is the case, we would simply increment count, which would be the case that, for example, as in this case, if there was a, as as s of I is equals to s of I plus 1, so then count would be equals to 2 in this case. And then for the next letter b, if that would not be the case, so what we could do is simply is that we would generally append the ith index of the string to the resultant string. And now we need to append count as well. But as count is an integer variable, we could not directly add it to string. We need to convert it to string in this case. So what we could do is that we could use the built-in function to string and then pass it the variable count, and then initialize count back to 1 again for the rest of the string. So this should be it for this. Yeah, we also need to check that if the resultant string's length is less than the original string's length. So in that case, what we need to do is that we need to return the resultant string if this holds true, and if not, what we need to do is that we need to return the string itself, original string itself. So now I should write the main function for this program. So I would take the same string as in the book for the example. So it was twice A and then B, then 5 times C, and then 3 times A. And then I need to see out what was the name of the function, compressed string. So now I need to pass it the string, and it will return us the compressed string in this case. So now let's run our program. Yeah, so as you guys can see that we have got the compressed string, which is accurate in this case, as our original string had A, which was twice, and then B, which was once, and then C, which was 5 times, and then A, which was thrice again. So this would be it for this problem, and see you guys in the next video with problem number 1.7.